Nothing like 10 milliseconds before the show to find out if I am in frame properly. This is Kelly and Company with Ramya Amuddin and Nisreen Abdel-Majid. On today's show, we're going to honor Mental Health Awareness Month with an honest conversation. Matisse Hamel-Nelis is going to tell us about her professional and her personal journey dealing with the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And we're also going to honor Disability Book Week with the director of the movement, Lindsey Larsen. She's going to discuss the rapid growth of this international movement. It started really tiny. It's pretty huge now. And we'll chat about how visibility and vulnerability have laid the groundwork for effective advocacy in this way. Let's get started.
This is Kelly and Company.
So, Nazi, we're going to have honest conversations all the way through this episode, I think. 56 minutes worth of it, I guess. Is it 56 or 58 nowadays? Anyway, starting with... Honestly, I don't know.
We don't even know at this point. We just talk. We just ramble on until Jordan or Mark just kind of mute us, cut us off.
Exactly. Jordan's joining us today. And I was like, what are we going to talk about for 10 minutes until we get our first guest on? And so much of the same theme came to mind, which is just adulting in general. I guess adulting as people with disabilities as well, because that's just part of the realities. But adulting is tough, right?
First off, is it adulting or adulting?
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 Do people say adulting?
I feel like I say it sometimes.
Right.
It doesn't?
I feel like it sounds on TikTok.
Right. Adulting.
On TikTok, is it adulting?
Adulting.
I say adult. This is like the address and address thing.
Yeah, I feel like I said it too many times that it just doesn't sound right both ways now.
Yeah. No,
it's
you're
not
right.
a word.
It's
being old. Let's start with that.
Being old with disability.
Growing up is a struggle. That's for sure. I miss living with my parents sometimes.
What part of it?
Life was easier. You know, getting fed. I don't have to think about what to make for dinner every day.
Number one.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's not just even thinking about what to make for dinner. It's like if I was living with my mom still, she would have fed me something proper and I wouldn't have to toss in frozen samosas for 10 days in a row.
Yesterday I made homemade naan and butter chicken.
Okay, that
and
sounds
I had to wake up early to make the naan because like you have to let it sit and rise.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is not my life right now. This is not my life. I actually have to get up early
everybody
to make
by saying exactly. You did. You got up instead of sleeping in.
Up. Yeah.
And by the way, we just want to put it out there. We don't have kids yet. Like Nisreen and I don't have kids. It's just us.
Imagine us having kids at this point when we're just complaining about cooking and
I'm like, and just at the end of a full work day, which is like a regular person's life. I don't want to make food. I want to take a nap. By the way, do you take naps?
Honestly, I have to say I've been taking naps and it's the best feeling in the world.
It is.
I feel like
45 to 90 minutes, right?
Yeah, like, oh my God. It's honestly such a great way to just, refresh and go on about my day. But you don't think that you need it until you hit the bed and you're like, I need this. Yes. But I felt shameful in the beginning for taking naps. Now I'm just like, I actually do this now.
There's like a couple months where I was like, no, this is not a regular. It's just because I have some free time. Oh, because we want to wait till sunset at 7 p.m. to go out on a walk. So there's 2 hours where you could just go to sleep. But actually now, if I don't take my nap, I am non-functional either the next day or like just not productive at all. Yeah. And you don't know you need it until you lose 3 days of no naps. And then you're like, okay, listen.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to cancel social plans to get my sleep. Yeah.
I got to tell you that I barely slept on the weekend. And for the past 2 days, I've been in and out of sleep during the day. I've been clocking out like in the evening. And it's just, I sleep so early now. And it's not like me. It's not like me at all. It's just because I didn't have
the nap.
the nap, the
Yeah,
nap and sleeping on
the reset.
time is,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
it's honestly important. But
You know
what about
what,
making,
too?
yeah,
Making what? Go.
making plans?
No,
Do you
I
like
don't
to go
make
out?
I don't make plans, I just cancel them. Cancel the things I
I'm
say
at
I'm
an
gonna show up for.
age I'm at an age where I make plans, but then I regret it right away. And I
Mhm.
really hope the other person cancels on me. I hope none of my friends watch this, but I really I'm the type of person that waits for another person to cancel and I'm like, "Thank
Yep.
God," but I'll message, "Oh, that's too bad. Next time."
That
Um
sucks. So for sure, we'll hang out again
I
soon.
regret my life making plans at a certain point and I just
Yeah.
want to stay home and do nothing.
I
I
remember when I
need that.
asked you to do all you can eat sushi with me, and you're like, "Sure." And it's like,
No,
"Okay,
okay,
let's
when it
make a
comes to
date."
okay,
Mhm.
let's be real. When it comes to sushi,
Okay,
I'll make that time.
fine.
But
So
if
every
we're
plan you'll
like,
cancel, but not plans with me and sushi specifically,
yeah, sushi
right?
with you is the
Okay.
goal here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put it to the test.
Um,
We'll let
put
people
it to
know.
the test. I'll be there. Okay. And if you cancel, I'll be like, oh, next
Oh,
time.
okay, unlike you, okay, you know how you said you try not to be the one who cancels, you're just hoping that
Yeah.
somebody else will? Oh, I am the opposite. I will
You're
cancel.
you're
And
that
I have
person.
canceled last minute, and I am mean, like inconsiderate, I guess is the word. Because people are like, "Come." I'm like, next time." I don't even make
Yeah.
excuses. But honestly, it's because of the exhaustion. It's not even because I don't love my friends or my family or whatever, or the actual plans that we
Exactly.
originally made.
Yeah.
It's just
Like
because,
I
like,
love them. And I do make the plans at first and then I'm like, oh, I just want to
yeah.
stay home today. I just want to
And
be in
people
my
don't,
pajamas. I don't feel like,
right?
baking my face. It's just not it's
This
just
is-
not it.
and truly, like the thing that people don't necessarily talk about, especially if you're in integrated like friends groups where you might be the only one with a disability, um, somebody else's commute is not your commute, right? Like my
Mhm.
TTC experience is not the same as just meeting my friends downtown who drove there. And yeah,
Yeah.
sure, I guess there are parallels. Like they got to find parking. Ugh, sucks for you. But my TTC experience is just not the same. I'm probably leaving much earlier than everybody else to get somewhere. The fatigue, like if I've had
Mhm.
an exhausting vision day because I've been on the screen all day, and then I have to use my vision continually into the evening as well for whatever reasons,
Yes.
it's tiring,
It's
genuinely
tiring
tiring.
and I feel like a lot of people don't understand and I love my friends, but sometimes I would feel like they would think it's an excuse not to meet up, but it's
Sure.
very true. Like when I'm on the screen too much, I get very nauseous in the
Yes. Yeah.
afternoon
Yeah.
or evening time. My head starts to hurt a lot. My vision starts to deteriorate, and
Yep.
I feel extra nauseous. So to tell my friends, "Oh, I'm not feeling well," they're just gonna think, "Oh, like you're flopping on us," and I'm like, "No, no, no,
Especially if
that's
that's
not
all
it.
we've been
I
doing.
promise." Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, I know in the past I do flop here and there, but this is
Hmm.
facts. Like I'm on the screen all the time. It's
Yeah.
it's hard. It's really hard sometimes. And if you're
Yeah.
having, my vision is just like even when you're on the screen, sometimes from the very beginning when you wake up, it hurts from the
You're
beginning.
already in a.
And it's
That's right.
you're
Yeah.
already in that position.
Like let's
So,
say you've had a few bad nights of sleep and you've had not sufficient amounts of coffee, and you're just tired in general for whatever reason, you've been thrown off your routines. That does affect like our visual uh,
yeah.
presence as well, right? Or the fatigue or whatever else. Maybe you're more light sensitive that day, and then it's
Mhm.
just a snowball effect essentially. This
Light
week feels like one of
sensitive.
those weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And as I said,
Blurred
like on the
vision.
weekend, I barely got any sleep. I've
Hmm.
noticed that I got, I feel nauseated. I got major headaches, migraines, and then it's also I start to see like floating bubbles when I get too tired.
Mm-mm.
And I wish, other people would understand that case and kind of I obviously we don't want sympathy. We just want that understanding.
Just
If
some
we
understanding.
need to take a day, it's not a big deal. If
Yeah.
if we need a moment, like it's not that serious. It's just a typical day in our lives, you know what I mean?
And
So
I
just to be
definitely don't want to
considerate.
show up
Yeah.
cranky. Like that's the other thing, right? Like these are things that, you can talk about with your other disabled friends, but you're not necessarily
Yeah.
bringing up in such detailed venting conversations while you're hanging out with your friends for 3 hours, right? And being like, oh my gosh,
I
guys, I'm having
hate
the
that
worst vision day.
feeling though. I
Yeah.
honestly do hate that feeling where
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to complain at all about my disability, because if I
No.
do, they're gonna feel annoyed, or I'm complaining too
Or
much
bad
or
for
whatever.
you.
Like,
Or, yeah, it
yeah, I don't
monopolizes the
or
conversation,
bad.
maybe.
Yeah, they'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, Nasreen. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I literally,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's something like there's definitely kind of this balancing act, but I wanted to tell you because something you said reminded me of over the weekend. um we were helping research students from Brock University in St. Catharines
Mhm.
create like concussion baseline protocols for people who are blind or have low vision, right? Because when you're getting
Mhm.
tested to find out if you have a concussion or not, if you're an athlete, if you don't have visual stimulation, if you have like zero sight or very little sight, there's not a lot of research being done on how to check for concussion symptoms. So we're helping these people out, and we were at Lake Joe Camp for blind soccer. And one of the tests that they were doing on me to figure out like feedback is, can I like they'll bring a source, a light or a highlighter or whatever, closer and
Yeah.
closer to my face in front of my nose, and I'm supposed to tell them when I can see double. Have
Uh,
you know what they're talking about? Because I realize I have no clue what that even means. I don't think I've ever actually experienced
see
seeing
double?
double.
No.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I feel like when it's for me, when I for my right eye, because I have low vision in my right eye as well, but when
Mhm.
from distance, like long distance, I do tend to see like shadows of an item. Like I don't
Okay.
see the item properly. Like looking at my camera right now, I do feel like there's a shadow around it. I don't see the object in depth.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it might be like a double effect to it, but I don't even know if that's it. Like it
But
depends on if you
right.
have like,
It's the concept of double that I'm not
yeah,
necessarily understanding. And it's the same thing
yeah,
for blurred vision. Like when people say, do you see blurry? Or is that one of your, can you describe your sight as being blurry? I'm like, I'm not sure because I don't really think I know what blurry means. I guess a lot of people with different conditions, like vision conditions, can attest to this as
hmm,
well. Right? Because even when you ask
yeah,
someone if they're colorblind, some people will describe their colorblindness in such nuance. I can see like red versus blue, but I can't see red and orange. Like the difference
yeah,
between red and orange and pink or something. But
yeah.
anyways, it's interesting stuff.
It is.
We're gonna bring in our first guest now, Matisse Hamel-Nelis, and we're gonna have an honest conversation with you, Matisse. And this is in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. You're here to talk about your professional and personal journey with bipolar disorder. So I have a few questions for you, but is there anything you wanted to chime in on? Anything you heard that Nisreen and I talked about already?
Um, Absolutely love the conversation as I was listening to it. Adulting. I also mix them up and say either or. So I don't know which
Adulting?
one's
Okay.
adulting.
Adulting,
I thought you
adulting.
fixed the
Adulting.
problem instead of
Um,
adulting.
We're going back to this. Yeah.
but the fatigue component, where you were saying, for yourselves, it was with your vision, and that the experience of going downtown using TTC is one experience with that. For me, I like to say I'm out of spoons. My social capacity
True.
is completely out. Because with the bipolar and, I also have ADHD, it's a matter of sometimes putting on a mask from a professional perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's fine and dandy. I'm able to do my 9 to 5. But then after 5, I'm like, I need to take the mask off and just go cuddle my dogs and not be near people and put on Law and
For
Order.
real.
And let me just, zone out
That's
kind
so
of thing.
fair. Yeah,
So
I
I
feel,
completely appreciated
yeah.
when you were saying that.
I feel that too. Like, why do we have to always put a mask on for other people? And just, and people don't understand that. It depends
No.
on, you know, what the circumstances and how your day is played out. I do feel like I have a low social battery these days, and I get
Mm-hmm.
it. But yeah.
That conversation is getting more and more prevalent though, like
Yeah.
unmasking and not having to create like a social version of yourself, or at least even if you do, being honest about that, right? Like
Yeah.
I have the capacity today, but not later today.
Exactly. And that's sort of the problem when you were saying like you sort of have to cancel plans because plans get made so far in advance sometimes that you're like,
Yeah, fair.
hey, I thought I was good the day I said yes, but today it's been a day. And I
Yeah.
just don't have
Yeah.
the mental capacity to come talk to you or to do this. Now, if it's a best friend and they're in crisis, I drop everything and I go no matter where I am.
Yeah.
But if it's, let's go for dinner, it's like, or you go for dinner. And I just kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
go on order with my dogs.
And you can just
But
message me how the dinner is. Yeah.
Yeah.
in photos, I'm there in spirit kind of thing.
I do feel like this is a
Oh
new
yeah.
issue where like we've been part of like adulting is making plans far in advance. I can't do, okay, today you want to go out? No, I need to plan ahead. But at the
No,
same
you're
time,
right.
Yeah.
like you
Yes.
said, Matisse, I it depends on the day, like that the day of could really screw me over and I'm just not about to go out.
Mhm.
So I have to make plans in advance, but at the same time, I just don't know what the day brings. That's the struggle here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That
sometimes
is actually
friends
a
will
really good point.
Yeah, and sometimes friends will think, well, it's because you think you can cancel on us easier because we're your friends and we'll understand. I've
Yeah.
not gone to like concerts or,
Oh,
actual
like full
events.
on.
Well,
Yes,
because
yes.
it's like
Mm,
mentally, the commute down, the whole dealing with just people, even though I'm not talking to
it's a
them, right?
lot. Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
just like, I'd rather skip. So it's, understanding ourselves in that regard and giving ourselves space and grace to
Yeah.
say
Hmm.
that, what, if I have to cancel, I have to cancel. And it's not just for on friends, unfortunately, as much as I would love to hang out with them, but some days it's just no. And other days it's saying no to, a concert of some sort, even though you were really
Mhm.
excited for it when you got the tickets like a year in advance, the day
Yeah.
comes and you're mentally just done.
Yeah. No, I totally
Hmm.
agree. And the thing is, there's a lot. There ought to be a lot more forgiveness in these kinds of things, anyways, right? Like we mentioned, Nisreen and I off the top, like, oh, by the way, we're complaining so much, but we don't even have kids yet, right? But the thing is, we don't have kids, but we don't have kids, but we have uh, disabilities. Maybe others don't have disabilities, but they have kids. And maybe I don't
Yeah.
have a car, you do, but maybe you have a car, but you have much more that you need to take care of, like coordinate otherwise. Like there's just so much nuance in the conversations anyway. We don't all have the same like parallel cookie cutter lives, and
Yeah,
it's definitely not like a 80-20 split either. Everybody's got their accommodations and
exactly.
challenges.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly. Perfectly
So,
said.
well, thank you. So tell us, because you want to tell us about your experience and journey with bipolar disorder. So my first question was, did you get diagnosed as an adult?
Yes. So, funnily enough, when I was a teenager, really since I was 8 years old, I was experiencing issues, if you will, with mental health. And what was being diagnosed was, oh, you're clinically depressed. And at 14 was the first time I was put on medication for depression. However, when you are bipolar, when you are only being prescribed medication to assist with one aspect of it, so in my case, the depression side of things, the lows, it causes the mania, the higher side, the hyper,
Mhm.
to just go through the roof. So, what was happening is from like 14 to 21, I was experiencing these sort of Superman moments where I thought I was invincible, doing, silly, ridiculous things that um, if I look back now, I'm like, how could I have thought that was a good idea? That's just ridiculous. Oh my goodness. And so I was actually, I'm very open about this. I went to Homewood for an eating disorder when I was 21, and it was actually there that I was diagnosed with bipolar.
Mm.
And they said, yes, you check the boxes for depression, but my friend, you also check the boxes for these other areas that classify you as having bipolar. And at first, that felt like a death sentence to me because of all the interpretations of what bipolar looks like in the media. and it's just you can't function, you can't do anything, you're just, quote unquote crazy, and I use air quotes for that because of that depiction in the media. But in reality, once my medication was properly prescribed, and I had something that was a mood stabilizer with antidepressants, because mine is type 2, so I have more of the depressive side than the manic side. I was able to find my coping mechanisms that really were
Mhm.
good coping mechanisms, and that helped me thrive and grow,
Mhm.
and really find out who I was. Because up until that point at 21, I was a mess, is how I look at it. When I look back, it was just mentally, I didn't know what to do, what was right, what was wrong in terms of, doing a certain speed limit. I'm not going to say it because it was a while ago, but shame on me.
Yeah.
While driving, right? Realistically, I shouldn't have been doing that, but I felt invincible. Like nothing is going to happen. That was the most ridiculous thought
Yeah.
process, right? But now I look
Do you,
back and I'm like, why?
yeah. Do you feel like
Yeah.
if you had like a mentor or something, as somebody to guide you who is going through a similar experience, that it would have been a very different outcome? Because yeah, I feel like when personally for me, when I didn't have anybody in the disability community, I was very naive. I was in denial. I'm like, I know what arthritis. I don't know what you're talking about. I wouldn't be,
Right.
standing for a couple of days because, a couple of days before that, I was standing for 5 hours and it was just not
Yeah.
reasonable for me. And I was just very in denial about my disability. I feel like if I had somebody in the disability community that was going through a similar situation, it would have been a different outcome.
Relatable.
I,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think if, because you hear about depression more than bipolar, and the depression, when you're depressed, or have depression, it, for me, the perspective was it seemed more acceptable by society to have
Hmm.
depression. Like everyone has depression at some point in time, whether it's situational or whatever the case is. But the bipolar had this stigma to it. And just sort of,
Yeah.
how do I navigate that stigma now that, I'm in school, I'm trying to start a career and all this stuff. And now I have this. What does that mean? So had I had that mentor, it would have made such a difference early on in that diagnosis,
Mhm.
so that I would know, it's not what you see on TV. It's not those caricatures really of what people assume bipolar is like, because just like with vision loss, for example, it's a spectrum.
Yep.
There's different versions. And yes, there might be those who are, um, you know, way more manic, that is uncontrollable, and other tendencies. But then there's also the ones that they're taking their medication, things are controlled, and so on and so forth. um, and so that lived experience from somebody who would have gone through it, gotten the same diagnoses or similar diagnoses, and shown that, it's not the end, if you will. It's
Hmm.
not, you're more than what is depicted on TV. And I keep
Hmm.
referring back to television because that was the only understanding of bipolar that I had at the time, was what I saw.
Is it still like that? Like, do you still feel like from when you got diagnosed to now, and knowing people personally and things like that, do you still feel like TV and media, or just a bigger, like broad strokes representation that there is out there is inaccurate and misrepresentative?
A little bit. There was a show a few years after I was diagnosed, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it was about a surgeon, a brilliant surgeon who had bipolar, and they were showing her erratic behavior all the time, and being like, it's the bipolar, this is what it does, it's erratic, but
Oh
she's
boy.
also brilliant. And I'm sitting there going, or you don't have to show the erratic behavior, because she's medicated, she's a doctor, she wouldn't have a license to practice if that was the case.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
and
saw the
build.
same thing in a show called Homeland. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but the main
Mhm.
character, she has bipolar, and that's all they showed as well. She works in the CIA, but all her wrongdoings were based on her disorder, which I was like
Hmm.
appalled. I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
how can you just show that side
Well, it's
and be
antagonizing,
okay
first
with
of
it?
all, right?
Yeah.
Like all you're
Yeah.
doing is judging the character, judging the show, and judging this representation of the character because you're wondering the same questions. You're like, well, how
Mhm.
is she practicing? How is this safe? How is, is this really what it's like to be? And all that is, unconsciously, we're taking all that information in, and now we're just like, whoa, it's not necessarily helping the cause at all.
Mhm.
Exactly. And that's sort of what led for me to just rip the band-aid off, if you will, and just start
Hmm.
speaking openly and honestly about my experience. I work in
Hmm.
PR and communications, and like I'll post on LinkedIn about having bipolar and ADHD, and I have people who message me saying, "You're so brave for talking about it. Like I would never be able to. I have my own diagnoses with whatever, but there's this shame and the stigma around it." And for me, it's I'm tired of living in the shadow. I'm tired of having to, as we said at the beginning, put on a mask to suit
Yeah.
everybody else's needs.
Yeah.
I need to also protect myself, and just being open and honest, trying to remove that stigma one post at a time at this stage, and
Sure.
just sort
Yeah.
of about it, right?
I actually love that because we were talking about this yesterday. You know, noticing, okay, when is it a really good time to bring up your disability or disorder? When it comes to job interviews, do you
Yeah.
bring it up after you get hired or before? Because
Hmm.
I brought up the same thing where I'm like, okay, I could tell them before, but then that gives them a reason to be like, oh, this is too much work to
Yeah.
accommodate for this person, and they can make an excuse with that. So it's always, a very scary thing for myself, at least, to
Mhm.
to know when to bring this up with any situation, like when is it a
And make it
good time to
productive.
tell you that, I
Yeah.
have this.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. I love that you put on your LinkedIn. I think that is uh something
Brave.
proper, like I mean, it is
It
brave.
feels
Okay,
brave to
that's
me
fair.
because
Yeah,
yeah, because like
because I'm scared. Like sometimes I was
definitely.
scared before when I was applying to jobs. It was like more of like, okay, this is gonna give them an excuse, or like they're gonna, feel like it's too much
Yeah.
work to accommodate. It's just unfair
You
that
know,
we feel that way to put on a mask all the time. I bring this up a
exactly.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're always putting yourself up against somebody else, your assumed judgment of somebody else of you, right? Like, and we know as people with disabilities, we're not at the point in time where we could just walk into any space and not feel that nervousness or that, okay, I got to prove something to somebody, or I know that there's biases against me in this room. Like we're all feeling that in any given level,
Hmm.
whether you have an invisible disability or a physical visible disability. And
Yeah.
a lot of the time, even for me, I got diagnosed very young with my eye condition. There was a long period of time where I refused to use my white cane, even though I should have definitely. But then as an adult, I properly use my cane everywhere I go. It's kind of a, self-disclosure, right, as well,
Mhm.
and identifying right on the spot. But even then, I'm like, yeah, but do I got to bring up that I only use a screen reader, or do I have to, is it time for me to let them know that I can't see them at all and I'm just, faking it? Like, because there's so many like cited norm things that I've picked up over the years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That are much more specific disclosure, and you just kind of let people go with whatever you present yourself as. So it is very
Yeah.
brave for you to be like, okay, I'm just putting it all out there on LinkedIn. As soon as you see my profile, this.
Yeah, like I'll make posts about it randomly, and people will say, "Oh, you should post about it during Mental Health Awareness Month or
Hmm.
Global Mental Health Day or whatever the case is." And I'm like, "But why? That conversation ends on that month or that day. It should be
Yeah.
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
conversation. I'm not quote unquote honoring my mental health just because it's May or just because it's, October 10th. Instead, I'm honoring my mental health because it's an everyday thing. So if I want to
Yeah.
randomly post on a Tuesday, in June, let's say, then I want to
Hmm.
post randomly on a Tuesday in June about, what I'm going through with my mental health, or, like, hey, FYI, as a reminder, this is what I have, but this is what it's also given me. It's
Mhm.
given me perspective. It's given me abilities to adapt. When employers are saying, "Are you adaptable?" You damn well better believe I am,
Yeah.
because I know how to manage myself. And there'll be days where my work output will be not so great. But then the days where it is phenomenal, I'm doing the work of like 3 people, but I'm able to get
Yeah.
it all done. I know how to balance my work accordingly because I've learned to know myself and my ability and what my bipolar limits me to, but also grants me. Is sort of how
Yeah.
I look. And so, when I go for job interviews, or when I used to go for job interviews, I would be very open. I'm like, you're going to see this on my social media anyways. And if you do what everybody says, that you stalk our LinkedIns and our socials, you'll see it.
Yeah.
I have bipolar disorder. That doesn't make me any less than. If anything, it makes me more of an asset because I
Mhm.
know how to adapt with what I have. And then, when I start on the job, I'm very open about it with anybody who asks, not who asks, but rather like, oh, this is a little bit about me. So, hi, I'm Matisse. I'm new here. I also have bipolar. I like dogs. I have 2. Just sort of woven in as if it's a
Yeah.
natural conversation. And I remember
Yeah.
working for an organization one time, and I was in a very silly mood. It had nothing to do with my bipolar. It was just silly, when you have your silly moods.
Yeah.
And my CEO asked the question, like, "Are you good today? Like, you seem really hyper." And I said, "Oh, don't worry, I took my pills today." To which his assistant burst out laughing because she knew I had bipolar, and I thought I had said it to him. He was like, "I don't know if I can laugh at that or not." And I'm like, "You can.
Uh,
It's okay.
Oh
I'm sorry
man.
for that position."
Yeah.
I was in this silly mood. Um, but I'm trying really hard, and some days are obviously not going to be that way, but I try
mhm.
really hard to not look at it as a burden or a stigma on myself, but rather as, some people will say that, like, oh, your disability is a superpower. I just say it's something that's helped me thrive to be who I am today.
Sure.
I
Sure.
love that.
Yeah. And if only Kelly was here for the conversation around adding humor to
Yeah.
the serious
I
conversations,
know.
because that's all we do.
You
That's
do
all
that
we
too,
do.
Rims. I feel like I do
Yeah,
that
we
sometimes,
all
and I
do.
get a
Yeah.
reaction of like, I don't know if I should laugh at. I don't know how to react to that.
Oh no, no, we
It's
take it to the
okay to
another
laugh.
level. We're
I
testing
love
you.
Yeah.
Matisse, thank you so much. Obviously, it's always wonderful chatting with you. Thank you.
Likewise. And happy National Accessibility Week.
Thank you. You
Yes.
too.
Thank
We got a
you.
lot going on.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Matisse Hamel-Nelis joins us once a month, and we have all kinds of conversations with her. Lots of just, different things that she goes through with her disabilities, her advocacy work. There's always a lot to talk about. And speaking of which, more things to talk about. She said it's National Access Week. It's also Disability Book Week. So let's chat a little bit about that. It's an annual campaign celebrating authentic, nuanced disability representation in literature. But as big as it is right now, it actually started in a living room. And we love stories like this. No budget, no campaign strategy, just a mom who realized that her daughters weren't showing up in the stories around her. And now it's ballooned into this big international volunteer based movement that's quietly reshaping how people see themselves and others in books.
It was founded by author and parent Mary Meekum, and now led by director Lindsey Larsen. And technically, we're kind of late to the party. Disability Book Week was met with eager support at the end of April, and while it was amazing to follow the growing book list online, we wanted to follow up with Lindsey about the rapid growth of the initiative and talk about how the impact plays out year round. So, our recent guest on the show, lawyer David Lepofsky, said that awareness and education alone are not enough to make substantial change. But he did point out that social media has a critical role in what he calls the new playbook for young advocates. He was talking about garnering political support before taking the fight to the courts. But I wonder, Lindsey, given the success of, you know, DBW, do you think the real starting point for awareness and education isn't institutions, but rather ourselves and our community?
I do. I do actually very much believe that. I really feel like there is that starting point that a lot of people um, they see the awareness piece. You get on social media and you see something like, oh, it's cerebral palsy awareness day or something like that.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's awareness. And then where Disability Book Week comes in and is really the education piece, where we want people to go beyond awareness to the education piece. And we have a huge list of books that have been read by sensitivity readers, and we have other resources on Disability Book Week. And we hope that people take that initiative to educate themselves. But then this is where Disability Book Week, I feel like, gets fun, and where people start realizing that they're empowering themselves through reading. They're educating themselves. They're not being told, um, sometimes on social media and other platforms, someone's opinion is, kind of pushed out there in a way that people have a tendency to maybe get offended, or the way it was said,
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that. Whereas when people read for themselves, they have that way of coming to educate themselves on their own, and it's a different way to reach people.
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and it empowers them to then go forward. And then on our website we have some steps that people can then take if they want to go beyond what I say, beyond the awareness and education, to empower themselves, and get out into their communities and make a difference. Or maybe it's their child's school, or maybe it's their work environment, things of that nature.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because you're talking about the tone of something like this, right? It's not the hard advocacy necessarily. I mean, it ends up being, because the more people band together, or the more people love and support a particular kind of movement, it becomes that way. It becomes huge, which is what's happening here with Disability Book Week. But your tone of it is really just pick up this book for yourself, or get involved. People are getting involved. It's not even you really saying it, but it's people are getting involved because they see themselves supporting something like this and organically finding themselves in the midst of the movement. Can you talk about the publishing of the books with us? So your team focuses a lot on self-published books and underrepresented authors, which makes sense. It feels like a given. But why is that central to your mission?
Well, I think there's a variety of reasons. I'll touch on a couple. I think
Mhm.
one is details matter. And I think that a lot of self published authors unapologetically want to put certain information out there, and they don't want to be censored, and they don't want to, be told that, oh, well, if we adjust this, it's going to reach a greater audience. More people could relate to this. If that's not
Right.
the point, you know. So
Hmm.
I would say that I would think from the children's book side of things, we're looking at children's books that a lot of times maybe are not showing the world that we need to see. Like, why is there a playground that is completely inaccessible to a child in a wheelchair, and then the child in
Hmm.
the wheelchair is sitting next to that playground? Why is that in a traditionally published book? Whereas
Yeah.
self-published authors are, a lot of them, that doesn't go for everyone, but they want to make sure those details are in there. Showing different types of mobility aids, showing, communication aids that are different than maybe one that you see over and over again in a few of the traditionally published books, things like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I think those are a few of the
So like the
reasons.
nuanced conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So you mentioned to our producer, Matt, that people who never saw themselves in books growing up often end up writing their own. Is that like one of the quiet powers of visibility, not just validation, but inviting more creation?
Absolutely. I think, anyone who creates or does something, or when you see somebody out there doing something and they're similar to you, and you think, maybe you thought that could never be me, and you see that person doing anything, whether it's a profession, or it's art, or it's writing a book, I think that I that person would hope that others would be inspired, so they too can go out and create their own, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and share with the world. So I definitely I definitely think that. I don't think any author would say, I wrote the book and this is the book that everybody needs to read. I think it would be with the hope that others are inspired to share their stories and their experiences and their perspectives.
That being said, though, like, were there any mass successes you can think of, or like reasons why a certain kind of book would pick up um, for mass interest? Started
I
off
don't
as a.
necessarily know. I'm sorry, I don't actually know, for
Mhm.
instance, if there is a book that's kind of that was the story. I don't know that.
Right.
Mm.
So I'm curious about, like, again, going back to the origin stories of Disability Book Week, right? Started with one mom, Mary Meakin, and now then 15 volunteers to hundreds of people participating with no real budget, no real PR. It's a lot of organic mass movement. And I think it, it's interesting because of where we live, like how we live today, right? With the social media making such a big impact, with international communication, and just being able to know, like, the awareness, it never ends. So do you think that like, what are your what do you think about how big and how wide it's gotten?
Well, I think it's fantastic, but I
Hmm.
think
Of
I
course.
think what happened was um, we kind of just found a lot of people, and we've been reaching out when we see somebody that's kind of doing their own small scale, not something similar to Disability Book Week,
Yeah.
and we kind of can say, do you want to kind of join forces with us and we can make something bigger? And I think initially there's some like hesitancy, like, well, what do you mean? How could we do this? And we just started saying, well, let's start communicating with each other and building, on ideas. And that's what we did. And it kind of blew up bigger this year than we ever anticipated. We have no money, no metrics, but
Yeah.
we were able to see with like website views and social media views and things, how much we were able to get out there. And I feel like there's a kind of a newfound energy. And I'm actually meeting with my volunteer group tonight online, and we're going to be talking about what we want to see this next year, and hopefully continue to get more volunteers to join in, because I think what we realized was kind of the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Nobody has to give us permission. We can
Clearly.
put out what we want to. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Do you think we underestimate how powerful something like a children's book can be in disability advocacy?
I do, but I can tell you, I feel personally that there's one group out there, because they come to me a lot, that they understand, and it's teachers.
Yeah.
Teachers are coming and saying how helpful these books are, how important these books are. They get it. And I think it's because they see, after reading these books, after engaging with kids day after day, they can see the impact. I have had parents reach out
Yeah.
to me as well, um, but it's. I feel like teachers are always trying to be aware of what
I
is
love
making
that.
positive impacts on the
Hmm.
students, right? A parent might
Yeah.
note. I mean, a parent might notice it happening, but not necessarily stop and think about, well, how did we get to this point? Whereas teachers are
Hmm.
like, what can I do? What can we do? How can we change things? Um, so I
I
do
mean,
think teachers are tracking.
yeah. And I love that. I feel like parents, teachers, that's who should focus on those things because, you know, as kids, they're curious. They're curious. Okay, why is this person in a wheelchair? And a lot of parents feel awkward, and I've heard about this so many times. They feel awkward getting into that conversation and
Mhm.
opening that topic and explaining why and how this person is, for example, in a wheelchair. And I've come across kids, okay, when I've had like an eye patch on my eye because of my disability, I've had a kid ask her mom, oh,
Hmm.
like what's wrong with her eye, and she'll be like, don't say that, don't say that. I'm like, no, you could ask, like, you can be curious. You should teach your kids that these things happen. The like, this is what's going on in the world. It's not taboo to, ask in front of a person with a disability.
It
There's
shouldn't
nothing
be.
wrong with that. So
Yeah.
I feel like having, you know, a children's book about disability advocacy is so important, because that can open up so many conversations with your kid to, them asking, okay, why is this person with this? And there's, not every disability is visible. Like, there's so many
Yeah.
conversations that you can ask, and so many conversations you can have with your kid that doesn't lead to being like, no, don't say that. Oh, I'm sorry she mentioned that. I'm sorry, like that. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. If anything is
Definitely
wrong,
not.
it's that you feel like awkward about talking about it, which makes it the whole thing
Because
awkward.
they're scared too, right? Or like
Yeah.
not exposed or have the biases that we talked about earlier in the
Yeah.
show. But that is one challenge, like a lot of us still come with our own biases of what disability is supposed to look and feel like. If you have CP, this is you. If you're blind, this is you. And I just
Yeah.
recently realized that like there's an episode of Arthur where Arthur, the kids show, where one
Yes.
of the kids who's blind, Marina, is explaining in it's like a season 8 episode. She's explaining all the different kinds of nuances of having being blind. Some people might use braille, other people not really. Here's a blind
Hmm.
soccer ball, etc., etc. But I'm curious, Lindsay, like what are some of the other challenges, right? Like what are some of the challenges that you have to navigate, or movements like Disability Book Week have to navigate in order to make sure that the messages that we're getting are actually encouraging and supportive and productive in the times that we live in and with the kinds of challenges that we're facing, and not necessarily making things more difficult or complicated.
Hmm.
I think the standpoint that Disability Book Week is taking is more of not um, telling anyone about any particular disability, um, you know, not what this person's experience is, not what this person's experience is, but to open up your mind to a variety of literature, a variety of perspectives, um, because I think people will be surprised what they learn. I
Yeah.
can't even tell you, even with children's books. I'll give you this example from my own children's book that I wrote. I wrote the manuscript, handed it to my husband, and we have a child who has a variety of disabilities. And he said, the target audience is age 4 to 6, mind you, for this
Mm-hmm.
book. And he
Hmm.
said, I learned something from reading this book.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, good, because I
That's
think the
the
point
goal.
is the more we read, instead of like having to say we want everybody to have this perspective or see things from this point of view, the more we just allow ourselves to open our minds and hear what everyone has to say through their own writing. um, I just think it's gonna allow us to be just open-minded individuals, and I think it'll also ultimately help. When you see things even on social media, somebody might say something, and there's people who support it, there's people who attack it, and I hope we can go into these situations think with an open mind and say, I think that this person feels this way maybe because of this, and this person might feel this way because of this, and that's
Hmm.
okay, as long as we're being more aware of each other and our differences and our different perspectives.
Yeah. Do you think,
I
I
like
have
that.
to ask, because literature is so empowering and powerful and timeless, and the hope is for those of us who just love and appreciate traditional literature that we can continue the momentum of it, not the Fahrenheit 451 or whatever of it, right? Like we want to make sure that we're
Hmm.
still spreading the word, and that we're not censoring, and that just because we're having difficult conversations doesn't mean that we should shut down books. So um is that something that you're finding comes up a lot with the niche of Disability Book Week and what it is? Because I know that in the news and in current times, we're dealing with still, unfortunately, a lot of this where we're shutting down books and shutting down the literature and saying because we do not want the more and more exposure to these conversations.
Right. Disability Book Week is a group of volunteers, and I think that's the beauty of it. We don't have to answer to anyone but collectively ourselves and what we feel
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with. If we have a book that comes to us and somebody is unsure, we set that book aside to have another sensitivity reader read it. But our criteria is very broad. There are certain things that, I think of it like I wouldn't let my child who's 11 years old watch a certain show. So if a
Mm-hmm.
book is, for a certain age group, for instance, there are going to be things that I would say, this really, we don't think as a collective group that this would be appropriate. Um, Luckily, we haven't had that happen a lot. I think the bigger we get as an organization, the
Yeah.
more we're going to encounter situations like that. And that's going to be hard, but I think that's where it's great to have this volunteer group with a lot of people and a lot of perspectives, and we can actually sit
Yeah.
down, have a Zoom call, and we can talk about it and hear each other out before we
And
make
there's
any
like
decisions.
no pressure with you guys because you're volunteers. I feel like there's not
Right.
many rules to go about. There's no pressure. And I think that's the highlight of your organization, right?
Absolutely. That's what I think. I noticed some of the hesitancy initially with volunteers, like saying, "Well, what if I feel a book is good and somebody else doesn't?" And I said, "That's okay.
It's
That's
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we're having this huge list of books out there." And I know, like for instance, with the children's books, we did something which I was so proud of one of our volunteers who really wanted to, help teachers by linking as many books on our children's book list that have YouTube read aloud links. She wanted that on our website, and so she got to work, and in 2 days she had all the links up on our website for teachers to be able to share with their students the different books. So things like that, you have an opportunity to read them ahead of time to make sure that the content matches, let's say, what you're going to be talking to your students about or something of that nature. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not going to be canceling people's books. That we're
No.
not in the
Yeah.
business of that.
And what if, like, have you ever experienced anything where a celebrity or an influencer has um, wanted to be involved, or like there was some kind of a big name that could be involved with Disability Book Week, and did you have to navigate the ins and outs of that kind of thing because of the tone of Disability Book Week?
Not yet. We've
Okay.
had influencer those who we share um, on our social media. We are happy to share like bookstagrammers, to our stories. We don't put it in our content as the content we create, but we're happy to share. So if somebody's interested in more of what that individual has to offer and has to share, then they can start following them. Um, yeah, I could say to some extent we're a little, I don't want to use that. No, I'm not going to use a term. Um, I feel like what we put up in terms of our content on social media is more open. Um, but if you want to find something more specific in line with what you're interested in reading about, you might see that come across on our stories, and then you could follow those particular individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we haven't necessarily read all of the books that those bookstagrammers have
Yeah.
shared about, but they wanted to celebrate in Disability Book Week as well, and as they
Yeah.
should.
I hate that we're running out of time. We have like less than a minute, but I wanted to ask you what's next for Disability Book Week?
Well, I'm gonna find out what my volunteers, what ideas are cooking tonight. But I know we are
Love it.
starting a newsletter, so that's going to be
Lovely.
something great. Again, we have no reason to spam people. we
Hmm.
we hope to have a nice quarterly newsletter to update people on some of the books that people have read. Showcase about what interviews we've done, things of that nature, highlight an author, things of that nature. So we're excited for that and our growing list of books, and whatever resources people want to add to our website. Right now we have like letters people can send to their schools and libraries to promote Disability Book Week, but we also want it to be year round, that people think about coming to the website and checking out new books.
Yeah, amazing. Can I just say that the segment flew by because I really wanted to get into more? Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was Director of Disability Book Week, Lindsey Larsen, discussing the rapid growth of Disability Book Week and how visibility and vulnerability lay the groundwork for effective advocacy.
On the next show, Kelly and Company, we are talking about picnics because it is prime time for picnics as the weather gets warmer, and we want to know how we can do it without getting gross food in our picnics hours later. So Mary Mamelidi is keeping us covered. Portable, prep-friendly ideas to keep our picnics simple and satisfying. Join us for that next time on Kelly and Company.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.